So back in my top 5 favorite Sonic games video, I said that I would probably end up making a more detailed video on each of the 5 games in there. And to begin with, I'd like to start with Sonic Mania. This also includes the Plus expansion of course, which is the definitive edition of the game. At the time, I remember back in 2017, when the game was released, being pretty hyped for Sonic Forces, the 3D modern Sonic game that was released just a few months after Sonic Mania. I knew Sonic Mania was coming out before Forces, but it wasn't the one I was more hyped for, which was honestly kinda stupid of me in hindsight. But hey, I wasn't really sure how either game would be until they released. I got Sonic Mania the night it came out, and I don't think I stopped playing it until the day after that. It was an incredible experience, hence why it's in my top 5 favorite Sonic games, and it would easily blast past Sonic Forces in terms of quality. It's kinda weird thinking about it now. Sonic Mania came out 6 years ago, but it instantly became a timeless classic that I still enjoy to this day. Sonic Mania, and by extension Mania Plus, for those who don't know, is a return to form for classic Sonic. Sonic Mania has 12 zones, 4 of which are completely brand new, and the other 8 are remakes of old zones with added mechanics. These new zones are some of the most fun in the game, and have really unique theming, and really stand out in the many different classic Sonic zones. I've always enjoyed Studiopolis and Mirage Saloon, but Press Garden has recently grown on me, and I really like the first act. Titanic Monarch is a great final zone that definitely creates a challenge, especially in the second act. Now, as much as I'd like to do a full deep dive and review of Sonic Mania, I think there are plenty of those out there by this point, and I'd like to make mine a bit different, and instead see how the game holds up after 6 years, and a DLC. I think Sonic Mania will probably be a game that is forever seen in a positive light. I don't think there's really anything that could be done to change that, and I think it's important to say that right away, because even after all this time, Sonic Mania is one of the best Sonic games of all time. Especially seeing how classic Sonic's inclusion in Sonic Forces turned out, it makes his gameplay feel all the more special in Sonic Mania. Mania provides a ton of content, even before you get into adding mods. There's the main story mode, the Encore mode added in Mania Plus, and many different side modes as well. In terms of content, Sonic Mania still has plenty to offer, and replaying the game is just as good as replaying any other classic Sonic game, which I'm sure a decent amount of people just did with the release of Sonic Origins. Aside from having a ton of content, a lot of that absolutely does still hold up, just like the original classic Sonic games. The gameplay here is pretty much timeless, super easy to pick up and play, but difficult to master and speedrun, the perfect kind of gameplay for a classic Sonic game. I think if I had to pick some of my favorite zones, or maybe even specific acts, they'd probably be Chemical Plant Act 2, Studiopolis Zone, Press Garden Act 1, Mirage Saloon Act 2, Lava Reef Zone, and Titanic Monarch Zone. And even besides those, I think the only zone I don't like playing through is Oil Ocean. I wish they would have gone with any other zone from Sonic 2, but for being the only zone I dislike in the game, I'll take it. In terms of actually finishing the game, you can get either the good ending or the true ending. Collecting all the Chaos Emeralds will give you the true ending, just like it will in any other classic Sonic game, but I think this boss fight is maybe slightly underwhelming when looking at something like the Death Egg robot from Sonic 2 and the Big Arms or Doomsday Zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I still do like the final boss, and getting access to Super Sonic is worth collecting all the Chaos Emeralds, but I do wish the final boss maybe had a bit more to it than just attacking the bosses whenever they're on screen. Speaking of Super Sonic, the special stages in this game are probably my favorite out of any classic Sonic game. I actually really like the half-pipe special stages in Sonic 2, as long as they actually run well that is, but these feel like full-on levels rather than just a mini side quest, and they aren't too annoying like the blue spheres can sometimes be. I think these special stages will actually age pretty well, and I wouldn't be surprised if they return in a future Sonic game. Moving on to the actual DLC parts of Sonic Mania Plus now, I really like the addition of Mighty and Ray, and having 5 characters in a classic Sonic game is something that not even Origins Plus can say, a game that came out 5 years after Mania Plus. The remixed level themes also provide some nice replayability whenever you're looking to switch it up, and it almost gives a New Game Plus vibe to the entire game. The character switching aspect of the Encore mode also makes the game play pretty different, because you're more focused on making sure you have the right character selected and not losing the one you like to play as, so that too adds to keeping these levels replayable. I know I keep saying things like replayable, but I think it's important to look at those kind of things, when now that the game is 6 years old, most people have already played it at least once, and giving them a reason to replay it every so often adds to the value of the overall game itself, outside of just wanting to experience the game like they did the first time they played it. Speaking of replayable, if you've got access to mods, this Sonic game has some of the most mods out of any Sonic game out there. Most are simple sprite swaps or small things like that, but others completely change the way you play the game. So if you're ever feeling like you want to play Sonic Mania, but want to switch it up a bit, mods are the easiest way to do so. While I do love a lot of aspects about this game, I do think there are a few criticisms and things that haven't held up the greatest over the years. I know some people might like having lives on, and for me personally, it's never been an issue, but with Sonic Origins getting rid of lives in the Anniversary mode, it does make the game feel more forgiving. Plus, they get replaced with coins that allow you to retry special stages, and I think especially in some special stages in Sonic Mania, a retry would be very beneficial. This one is a bit more subjective, but I think with the sheer amount of times that old zones have been brought back in Sonic games by this point, I think it would have been nice to have had more original zones, because the ones in this game are really good. But playing through zones like Oil Ocean, Flying Battery, and the various Act 1s that haven't been changed up much, does get a bit repetitive, especially if you've just played those zones in one of the previous Sonic games that they come from. Like I said, that one is more subjective, and is absolutely a nitpick, but I don't really have much else to complain about when it comes to this game. It's just that good. There are probably some others. I'd like to be able to play the original Metal Sonic boss when I play through the base game, but purchasing Mania Plus overrides it in both modes. Not a big deal though. Despite all of that, Sonic Mania is easily one of my favorite Sonic games. I literally put it at my number 5 spot in my top 5 video, so if it wasn't clear then, well, I just said it again now. Sonic Mania has a ton of great levels, ones that hold up to this day. And while I may not enjoy every single aspect of this game, it is absolutely still a great game. Everything comes together to create a full experience, something that was kind of lacking in other Sonic games that were released around it. I really don't want to keep mentioning Forces, but I mean, come on, it's right there. The Plus expansion only adds onto that package to make it one of the best classic Sonic experiences that's been made so far. And I already talked about the mods, so don't even get me started on them again, or else we'll be here forever. While Sonic Mania Plus may not be my absolute favorite definitive classic Sonic game, that still belongs to Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That doesn't mean it isn't a masterpiece, because it definitely is. Well, that wraps up the first video of my top 5 favorite Sonic games. I figured starting from the bottom was not only a good way to keep continuity, but Sonic Mania is also just an easier game to make a video on, and most of what I said in this video has probably already been said elsewhere. That's the downside of making a video on an already beloved game, I guess. But I still wanted to regardless. Thanks for watching, drop a like and subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you next time.